signed an executive order yesterday making burning the American flag a jailable offense. Is this, I don't know, excessive? Isn't burning the American flag protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution as free speech? 617-266-6868 is the number here. 617-266-6868. This is Sandy Shack in for Jeff Kuhner here on the Kuhner Report. The executive order signed by President Trump in the Oval Office with full press in attendance instructs the Attorney General to, and this is his quote, vigorously prosecute people who violate flag desecration laws and to pursue litigation to clarify the scope of the First Amendment regarding the issue. It was an interesting moment, I have to say. It took me by surprise. Maybe it didn't take a lot of other people by surprise. But this was President Trump in the Oval Office yesterday. Cut 1A, please, Mike.
What the penalty is going to be, if you burn a flag, you get 1 year in jail, no early exits, no nothing. You get 1 year in jail. If you burn a flag, you get, and what it does is incite to riot. I hope they use that language, by the way. Did they?
Yeah, incitement.
Incite to riot. And you burn a flag, you get 1 year in jail. You don't get 10 years, you don't get 1 month. You get 1 year in jail, and it goes on your record. And you will see flag burning stopping immediately.
If there's a year in jail attached to it, I think you would, in fact, see flag burning stop immediately. The order signed by Trump also directs the Attorney General to refer flag desecration cases to state or local authorities and instructs the administration to prohibit and terminate visas, residence permits, and naturalization proceedings for those who desecrate the flag. So if you are a guest in this country and hoping to stay, and you burn the flag, your dream will be short-lived. You will not get to stay. So flag burning has been litigated at the Supreme Court level as a free speech level, as a free speech issue. In the big case was in June of 1989 when a deeply divided U.S. Supreme Court upheld the rights of protesters to burn the American flag in a landmark First Amendment decision. It was called Texas versus Johnson. And it was a deeply, deeply divided court. I mean, it was razor thin, 5-4 was the decision in favor of Mr. Johnson. He was the protester who had burned the flag. Johnson's actions, according to the majority of the court, were symbolic speech, political in nature, and could be expressed even at the expense of the flag, which is our national symbol, and very offensive to a lot of people who disagreed with him and his actions. Now, Justice William Brennan wrote the majority decision, and he also had on his side Anthony Kennedy, Thurgood Marshall, Harry Blackmun, Scalia. They were all part of the majority. And according to Brennan, Johnson was convicted for engaging in expressive conduct. And the state's interest in preventing breaches of the peace does not support that conviction. This is according to the Supreme Court, because Johnson's conduct did not threaten to disturb the peace. So they said because burning the flag didn't disturb the peace, there was no local interest in, and they couldn't stop him. So nor does the state interest in preserving the flag as a symbol of nationhood and national unity justify his criminal conviction for engaging in political expression. So they didn't reach the bar that Brennan thought they should reach. And Justice Kennedy wrote a concurrence to that and said, this is verbatim what's written in the decision. The hard fact is that sometimes we must make decisions we do not like. We make them because they are right. Right in the sense that the law and the Constitution, as we see them, compel the result. And so great is our commitment to the process that except in rare cases, we do not pause to express distaste for the result, perhaps for fear of undermining a valued principle that dictates the decision. This is one of those rare cases. So he's saying, even though you find it distasteful to burn the flag, it is right to protect your right to do so. That's how he is holding. Now, dissenting were Chief Justice Rehnquist, John Paul Stevens, Sandra Day O'Connor, and Byron White. Rehnquist said in his dissenting opinion, the flag is not simply another idea or point of view competing for recognition in the marketplace of ideas. He did not agree with that the First Amendment invalidates the act of Congress and the laws of 48 of the 50 states, which make criminal the public burning of the flag. So he didn't see a conflict between the First Amendment and the burning of the flag. Now, the battle in the courts about the flag desecration goes back to the turn of the last century, around 1907. There was a case called Halter versus Nebraska, which upheld a state law that prohibited two businessmen from selling beer that had flag labels on the bottles. So that's when this whole thing started. Then in 1968, Congress approved the federal flag desecration law, and that happened after a Vietnam War protest. And that law made it illegal to knowingly cast contempt upon any flag of the United States by publicly mutilating it, defacing it, defiling it, burning it, or trampling upon it. And then the court inched closer to the 1981 Johnson decision in 1974 in a case called Spence versus Washington, where they held that a person couldn't be convicted for using tape to put a peace sign on an American flag. They said that's not desecration. The decision made it clear that a majority of the court saw the act as protected expression under the First Amendment. So fast forward to the 1980s, and you've got Gregory Lee Johnson burning a flag at the Republican National Convention in Dallas. And officials in Texas arrested Johnson and convicted him of breaking a Texas law that prohibited desecration of the flag. He was sentenced to 1 year in prison and ordered to pay a $2,000 fine. The Court of Appeals for the 5th District of Texas in Dallas affirmed that conviction, but the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals reversed, and then the Supreme Court affirmed the Texas Court of Appeals. In reaction to the Johnson decision, which only applied, by the way, to the Texas flag desecration law, didn't apply anywhere else, it was that narrow a decision, Congress then passed a national anti-flag burning law called the Flag Protection Act of 1989. So this all happened within months of each other. But a year later, in another court case, that was U.S. versus Eichmann, the court struck down that law, the Flag Protection Act, as unconstitutional. And that was another 5-4 decision, a really close decision. In that opinion, Justice Brennan, citing the Johnson case from 1989, said, if there is a bedrock principle underlying the First Amendment, it is that the government may not prohibit the expression of an idea simply because society finds the idea itself offensive or disagreeable. And that case, that decision, and the Johnson case have remained controversial right up until yesterday, when the president signed his executive order. I think back in 2006, Congress tried to amend the Constitution to prohibit flag desecration, but that failed by one vote in the Senate. So it's always been a really razor-thin majority that has won the day when it comes to allowing flag burning, and it's really a huge issue that President Trump has reopened with his executive order yesterday. I always found it very interesting that Justice Scalia, a conservative legend on the Supreme Court, ruled he actually cast the deciding vote in the Johnson case that allowed flag burning. And he was asked in one of his last public events to explain why he did that. And he explained citing the principle of a textual reading of the First Amendment, because he was a strict constructionist. He said, if it were up to me, I would put in jail every sandal-wearing, scruffy-bearded weirdo who burns the American flag. But I am not king. And that's what it comes down to. You may find burning the flag abhorrent. If you're like me, I was raised by my mother with strict flag etiquette, how to fold a flag, what to do with a flag that has aged itself out and is starting to wear, how to get rid of a flag, and we didn't burn them. We took them to the nearest VFW, and I was raised to respect and hold the flag sacred. But the Constitution says the First Amendment is more important than that. And so far, there have been just enough people to support your right to burn the flag. Did President Trump do the right thing yesterday when he signed an executive order basically making burning the flag a jailable offense? This is Sandy Shack, by the way, filling in for Jeff Kuhner. President Trump yesterday signed an executive order making it a criminal offense to burn the American flag with a 1-year jail sentence attached to it. Do you agree with his executive order? And I'm making up the poll question today, which is sponsored by Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows, which you can take on X at the Kuhner Report or on our website, WRKO/Kuhner. Do you agree with President Trump's executive order making burning the flag a criminal offense? Didn't the Supreme Court already deal with this issue decades ago? And as I was talking to you just before the break, Justice Scalia, the deciding vote, said he didn't like it. He found burning the flag abhorrent. But he said the Constitution said you can do it. And since he was not king, he wasn't going to go against the Constitution. Is President Trump setting himself up as king in this instance with his order, ignoring both the Supreme Court and the Constitution in making burning the flag a jailable offense? Do you agree with what he's done? Lawrence in Malden, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Lawrence?
Holy mackerel. I can't believe I got in.
Okay.
Love President Trump.
Okay. Do you agree with it?
All for not 1 year and a day, 5 years and a day, you burn our flag. I lost an uncle and a grandfather in war defending this country. Mm-hmm. And I'm so upset right now. I don't want to lose my track. Anyways, my name again, I want everyone in the city to hear me. I had a big how do you do down at the police station yesterday with about 7 officers and the chief.
Okay, Lawrence, I got to stop you. I can't let you use this as a personal platform to go over what happened to you yesterday in Lawrence. We asked a very specific question about whether burning the flag is okay or not. If you can confine yourself to that, then we're good. Lawrence?
Auto garage in Malden, and I paid for the flagpole across the street from the garage.
Uh-huh.
And the mayor won't allow me to put the police American flag up.
On the flagpole?
Every time I put it up.
In front of your garage?
Yep, right in front. It's on the city island that I maintain, that they put across from my garage. I bought it in 1984, the garage at 27, without a high school education.
Yeah.
And because of the flag, they don't like the idea of the police flag up on the pole. And they come down and they keep taking it down on me.
Do they let you keep the American flag up on the pole?
Well, yeah, they want the red one on the top, which is okay. And then I put the police flag below it with the blue stripe. They continuously come and harass me to take down the flag. They take my flags. They won't give them back, and I got to continue to buy them on my own.
Why do they tell you that you can't put what is their reasoning? What do they say to you when they take your police flag?
As this mayor in Malden, he created this C-click thing online. See something, click on the computer, and so many people do not support the police.
Okay, Lawrence, I still don't understand why he won't. Is it just because Malden don't like police? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the mayor is he supports the gay flag. He can put the gay flag up, but I can't put the American flag up.
I see. I get it. So he only lets you put flags up that he can't. I appreciate that, but you can't use this as a personal platform to dox or out people. I can't let you do that. But I think that's horrible. I think you either let everybody put whatever group flags up they want, or you don't put any flags up other than the American flag. I think that is completely and utterly discriminatory, and I understand your ire. Thank you for the call, Lawrence. I appreciate it very much. Let's go to Dave in Dorchester. Dave, do you believe that the president did the right thing in signing an executive order making it a jailable offense to burn the American flag?
Sandy, I love it.
Okay. So it doesn't bother you that the Supreme Court has already said, no, you can't do that?
You know, I look at, Sandy, when I think about this whole scenario, you know, the flag represents the United States of America. It represents all the veterans of the United States who went to the wars during World War I, World War II, all the other wars we had to deal with. It represents the freedom of the country. And anybody who wants to burn the flag should be locked up, put in jail for a year, because they have no right to burn the flag. They want to say, oh, it's part of a protest and the First Amendment and all this, freedom of speech. No, it isn't freedom of speech. It's desecration. And it's an insult to the American people, and especially the veterans of World War I, World War II, Vietnam. Sandy, my dad was at the Battle of the Bulge. My mother was at Pearl Harbor. My older brother was in Vietnam. It would be an insult to them today if they knew what was going on today with the way people want to disgrace the flag. They got no right to do anything.
It's not just today, Dave. I mean, this whole thing started, this issue started because of the Vietnam War protests where they were burning the flag. But here's the thing. I find it abhorrent, too. So did Justice Scalia find it abhorrent. And I was raised to treat the flag with respect and hold it as a sacred object, basically. But the Constitution says otherwise. And the Supreme Court has already decided this. So when you are saying you disagree that President Trump can do this, and he's flying in the face of the Supreme Court, aren't you saying that the Supreme Court decisions mean nothing, so why do we care?
If the Supreme Court is saying that they don't care if people want to...
They decided this, Dave, in 1989. Sandy Shack sitting in for Jeff Kuhner here on the Kuhner Report. And just before the break, a hard break, by the way, we can't stretch those out. We were talking to Dave in Dorchester, whose entire family has served in the military and defended our country and finds flag burning abhorrent. And I completely agree with you, Dave. I do too. But the Supreme Court has already decided this issue back in 1989. That's over 30 years ago. And basically, according to the law, it's okay to burn the flag, even if you find it disgusting, like I do, like you do. And here's my issue with this, Dave. The Democrats take a lot of hits, rightly so, for picking and choosing the laws that they want to obey. They only will enforce the ones that they want to, and anything else that gets in the way of political expediency for them, they like to ignore. Isn't that what President Trump is doing right now? Isn't he ignoring a law that he doesn't like? Dave? Dave?
Yes.
I'm sorry, did you hear me?
Yes.
And?
Sandy, you know, nobody has, no matter who wants to change what, nobody has a right to burn the flag. And you know what? They should be federally charged.
Dave, you're ignoring my question. My question is, there is a law that exists now. It's a precedential law on the books that says you can. And even the huge, strong conservatives of the 1989 Supreme Court said, we hate this, but we have no choice, and signed it into law. Congress has had an opportunity to overturn that law. They haven't. So isn't President Trump picking and choosing the laws that he wants to follow? And isn't that one of our main complaints against the Democrats, that they do the same thing?
Well, the whole thing, Sandy, the Democrats don't care. The Democrats don't care what Donald Trump wants to try to do, because he's always trying to do the right thing.
Well, but here's the problem, Dave. Is he doing the right thing here? Because there is a law. It exists. It's not as if there's a vacuum. There is no law. There is a law that specifically says you can. And his executive order, which is not passed by Congress, says, I'm going to jail you if you do it. So isn't he doing something that we decry the Democrats for doing? Isn't this hypocritical?
What's hypocritical, Sandy, is that this is America. This is America, Sandy. And it's like people should be proud of the flag.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I do not have a problem with people being proud of the flag. I find it disgusting to burn the flag. I find it appalling, but I am a First Amendment absolutist. And if the First Amendment says that you can, you can. And it's not me that says the First Amendment says that. It's the Supreme Court that says that. So don't we have to abide by it? Thank you for the call, Dave. I appreciate that this is a very emotional, personal issue for you. But you're not answering my question, basically. And that essentially is President Trump doing what he and myself and Jeff Kuhner and a lot of other people accuse Democrats of doing, and that is picking the law that he wants to follow. And hasn't this already been adjudicated? Diane in New Hampshire, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Diane?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I was just calling because, no, I agree with President Trump. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's time for new laws then. Maybe they should pass a law. First of all, 2 points. One, I need a permit whenever I burn a fire, in my backyard even.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine people lighting up fires in the middle of the street, and that's okay. So that, first of all, is another law they're probably breaking, and everyone just ignores it. And the other thing is it's a hate crime. It's literally they want to set us on fire. They hate this country. They want to burn it up. It's a hate crime. They literally hate this country. And it seems like a act of terrorism when they want to destroy and burn something. It's not free speech to me. That is not free speech. Free speech is supposed to be nonviolent.
Yeah, no, I agree. I find it, but the problem that we have is that we are a law of nations. I mean, we are a nation of laws. I got that completely mixed up. We are a nation of laws, and we have laws on the books for a reason. And one of the laws on the books is a precedential law, meaning that the Supreme Court has ruled on it and has said that you can in fact burn a flag. And specifically, they said, and while it only addressed the Texas law, desecration law, basically it said that Texas's interest in preventing breaches of the peace, which is what you're talking about, burning a flag in public, basically preserving the flag as a symbol of nationhood and national unity does not justify a criminal conviction for engaging in political expression. They did not view burning a flag as terrorism. They viewed it as political expression. There is precedential law. The Supreme Court has said that. I may not agree with that. You may not agree with that. So what is the answer if we don't agree with it? The answer is to pass a law saying, okay, we do find it an act of terrorism. We do find it a hate crime. So this is what's going to happen to you if you burn a flag. But Congress hasn't done that. And they've had over 30 years to do that. They've come close to doing it, but they haven't managed to do it. So can President Trump just override both the will of the people, which is represented by Congress, and a Supreme Court precedent which has been established for over 30 years with an executive order. Isn't that a little hypocritical, whether or not you like burning of whether or not you support burning of the flag? I don't support burning of the flag, Diane. I find it appalling. I really do. And I find it disgusting. And I pretty much agree with you that it's an act of terrorism, but the law doesn't find it that way. So doesn't President Trump have to follow the law?
Well, I agree that if it's a law, yeah, we all have to follow the law. But maybe it's time for new legislation then.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that at all.
The law.
Yeah.
But as for like starting fires on the sidewalk in the middle of the street,
I think that's already illegal, and nobody says that this has to do with burning a flag in the middle of the street. This is, I mean, it can be. Nobody is out there. That's not what this says. That's not what his executive order says. You're right. Absolutely right. There is a law that you can't burn things in public. So it depends on where you live. Some places don't have that law. Some places do. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about in President Trump's executive order. It doesn't matter where you burn the flag. So if you burned the flag in your backyard and your town doesn't have a, no fire zoning issue, you can still go to jail for a year because you burned the flag. Say you burned the flag in your fire pit in your backyard and took a video of it and put it up for political expression, then the FBI can come and arrest you for a year and, put you in jail for a year if you're convicted. That's what this executive order says. Now, you may agree with that's okay, that should be what the law is, but don't we have to change the law first to make that a criminal offense? Diane?
Yeah. They should. Yeah, they should make a law. Then they should pass legislation and make it a law. But it absolutely is an act of terrorism. It's like an attack on our country. And then the communists love to hide behind our Constitution. We know they do. They use it against us all the time. All the time.
Yes, they do. And I think you have an absolutely good point there. Yeah. No, that you're right. And I think those were all the reasons to support a law that makes it a jailable offense to burn the flag. I think if that's what you want to do, but I think it takes an act of Congress to do that. Thank you so much, Diane. I appreciate the call. Let's talk to Anthony in Plainville. Anthony, good morning. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Sandy. I'm really glad you're touching on this topic today. I do agree with President Trump, but I think there's some context that I don't believe you've touched on yet.
Okay.
I watched the press conference, and the reason I don't believe he signed this executive order because he's permitting just the burning of the flag, but he wants to permit restrict what happens after. He did say in his press conference that the burning of the flag, it kind of stirs up violence on both sides, both people that are pro burning of the flag and anti burning of the flag. And while it is a rule, it is a law that it is the freedom of speech. I think President Trump sees it as arson. He sees it as a way to establish a reason for people to become violent, protesting, rioting, burning of the flag kind of leads to more violence. And I think President Trump, he's the most anti-war, anti-violence president of our lifetime. And
I'm sorry, we have to hold you there because of the break, but I think you're making an excellent point, Anthony. This is Sandy Shack sitting in for Jeff Kuhner here on the Kuhner Report. And we're discussing President Trump's executive order criminalizing the burning of the American flag. This issue was decided in 1989 by the Supreme Court, who said it was abhorrent, but you can do it as an expression of free speech. And to me, that ends the question unless Congress basically brings up or enacts another law saying otherwise, which they haven't done. They have tried to a couple of times, but they have not succeeded. And so to me, President Trump is ignoring the law when he signed this executive order. Now, before the break, we were talking to Anthony in Plainville, who raised the point that what President Trump was worried about was was violence that is inflamed, and no pun intended, by the burning of the flag. And that's what this executive order was about. And in signing the executive order, President Trump which is kind of skirting around the 1989 Texas v. Johnson case. He said that the court in that case had not ruled that burning the flag in a manner that can incite a riot or violence is constitutionally protected. So he's finding what he views as a loophole in that particular case. You can hear it from his own mouth. Cut number 1, please.
All over the country, they're burning flags. All over the world, they burn the American flag. And as you know, through a very sad court, I guess it was a 5-4 decision, they called it freedom of speech. But there's another reason, which is perhaps much more important. It's called death. Because what happens when you burn a flag is the area goes crazy. If you have hundreds of people, they go crazy. You can do other things. You can burn this piece of paper. But when you burn the American flag, it incites riots at levels that we've never seen before. People go crazy.
So that's basically what he is saying is the reasoning for his executive order, because violence ensues when you burn a flag, and so therefore he wants to find it define it as a criminal offense to avoid violence. I applaud the motivation, but that doesn't change the fact that for me that it's been adjudicated, and to make it a criminal offense, you need to go to Congress. On the text line, 70470 is the text line. Let's see, 781 says, Sandy, other contentious decisions have been revisited 50 years later and overturned. Absolutely. But this is not a case of the court overturning a previous decision. This is an executive order being signed in the face of that earlier decision. It's not up to the president to overturn the Supreme Court. It's up to the Supreme Court to overturn the Supreme Court. That's what happened in Roe versus Wade. That's how legal precedent works. You can't have another branch of government overturning that case unless they codify something specifically tailored that does not fly in the face of the earlier decision. And that's what they would have to do. Congress would have to do for flag burning. 781 says, I don't agree with burning the flag, but I do believe in your First Amendment. But step back and look at it this way. If I burn a gay rainbow flag, I get arrested for a hate crime, but burn the American flag and nothing. And the same sentiment is in another 978, which says, I find it disturbing that it's perfectly fine to say you hate America and burn the American flag and face zero consequences. However, if you were to burn a rainbow flag or a trans flag or a BLM flag in the same manner, you would face severe consequences, including hate crime charges. I agree with you that those are very bad situations, that those are hypocritical situations, that a flag that you hold sacred, the American flag, should be held to a higher standard than political flags, such as the BLM flag or the gay pride flag or rainbow flag or whatever flag you want. I agree with you. Those are bad situations and bad applications of the law. But does that mean that you should make another bad application of the law in order to make it more palatable to you? I don't like flag burning, period. In particular, the American flag burning. I find it absolutely soul crushing. I find it abhorrent. But the Supreme Court has said you can do it, that it is protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution, which, and I'm getting another text saying, where in the Constitution does it say that? The First Amendment doesn't specify specific instances of flag burning. What it says is political expression is allowed under the First Amendment, not only allowed, but celebrated under the First Amendment. And the Supreme Court has held that burning a flag is a political expression and therefore covered by the First Amendment. That's what our current laws say. So for President Trump, even though his motivation is the best motivation to prevent violence that may occur after burning the flag, there are a lot of things that create violent response to it. And this has already been codified as a legal expression. So isn't President Trump being hypocritical by going against the Supreme Court when in fact he ridicules people who don't follow the laws put out by the Supreme Court. That's one of my points. Let's go to Janice in Melrose. Janice, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you? Seems like I disagree with a lot of your callers, but I as a conservative, I support what Justice Scalia said. The Constitution gives us the right to protest our government, and to me that should come before everything. I don't like burning of the flag. I didn't even like kneeling in front of the flag, but we have to consider that we're not always going to have President Trump in the White House, and what precedents are we setting? And I think back to the Biden administration where they shut down free speech during COVID because it didn't agree with the official state line that they wanted to put out. And if we set this precedent now and say, well, we'll ignore the right to protest the government because other things are more important, then you'll have a progressive in the White House will say, well, preserving democracy is more important, so what your speech may incite a riot, so we're going to shut you down. Or we have to consider the Constitution should be it, and what say you?
You're a strict constructionist like Scalia is. Like I am. I'm a strict constructionist as well. So you're basically saying the slippery slope is being ignored by President Trump and people who are supporting that executive order because once you outlaw something because it might cause violence, then you are opening a huge Pandora's box of anything you don't like you can claim is going to cause violence and you can make it illegal. That's your position?
The preachers who are outside abortion clinics, and they're peaceful, but I could see where they could say, well, this might incite violence, so we're going to jail you if you do this. Or to me, we have the right to protest our government, and how does that make us any better than communist China? If people can't protest the government, we have that right, and I think we need to preserve that right, but.
I completely agree with you, Janice. I think that is besides the flying in the face of legal precedent issue. I think your argument of we have to protect free speech, and in particular protect our free speech as it goes toward protesting our government, even if you find that form appalling, which I do, which you do. Must be protected. And I completely agree with you. I think that is what a lot of people, your point is what a lot of people are losing sight of. And that President Trump, while you may agree with this particular incantation, this particular version of a inciting violence, therefore it must stop argument, what happens when he's no longer in the White House? What happens if Mamdani is in the White House? I mean, I can't even imagine that happening. It's a horrific idea. But what happens if that's what happens in 15, 20 years? Then he can make saying, hey, are you a communist illegal? You can't mention the word communism. You can't mention because it might incite violence. I think that argument is absolutely the rock bed argument against President Trump's executive order. No matter how well-meaning it is. I don't think anybody disagrees that President Trump means well here, that there is a larger purpose behind him signing that executive order. And I completely agree with him that the flag is a sacred thing. And the court's decision was very narrow. It was 5-4. And the congressional attempts to pass desecration laws have been very narrowly defeated, but they've still been defeated. That's the problem. They have still been defeated. And until you can pass something that's going to hold that up, until all the American people can agree that this should be a jailable offense, this should be a criminalized offense, you just can't sign it into law and not be hypocritical in my esteem. Derek and thank you for the call very much, Janice. I appreciate it. Derek and Cohasset, do you agree with President Trump's executive order to criminalize burning the flag?
No, I do not. I agree with you, Sandy. As you said, it's the First Amendment, and people have the right to do it. You can't start making laws based on what people might do as far as rioting and crimes are concerned. To answer your question that you asked at one of the gentlemen before, and he refused to answer it. Yes, Trump is being hypocritical by doing this. But I support burning the flag. But let's be honest, too. I think it's time we have a flag that America can stand behind. The American flag carries a lot of controversy with it. The same way the Confederate flag does, the same way the Nazi flag does. I mean, it's time, I think, that we create a flag that American people can get behind, because I think that's the problem that we need to rectify. People are burning the flag because they don't support it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I don't agree with you. In that respect, Derek. First of all, I don't think that the American flag is commensurate with the Confederate flag or the Nazi flag. I think that to me is just a ridiculous notion, to be honest with you, and somewhat offensive, actually. I don't think it has anything to. Nobody looks at the American flag and thinks Confederacy or Nazis. And I don't think people's issues are with the flag. I think their issues are with the policies of the American government. And the flag is the nearest emblem they have to respond to. So I think the American flag means different things to different people depending on which administration is in power. So, and when you want to change the American flag, what is it that you would rather see than the Stars and Stripes?
Well, Sandy, I'd like to see something that includes everyone. I mean, look.
How does the Stars and Stripes not include everybody? You haven't told me what is it that you're looking for. Yeah.
I'll tell you. During slavery times, it was the American flag that was flying. During the Civil Rights Movement, when the police officers were beating up blacks, it was the American flag that was flying. The American flag's on the chests of the police officers. That flag, unfortunately, carries the same connotation that the Confederate flag does. It's just as bad, and people don't think of it that way. But when the black people were being, tortured under during the 50s and the 60s, it was the American flag that was there, Sandy. How could that not be seen as racist? Obviously, people don't see it that way because the leaders have not told them that yet. And when
they haven't told them what yet?
Well, they haven't told them what to think yet. But when they finally do, then the American people will be like, yeah, you know what? That flag is racist.
I don't, Derek, to be honest with you, I don't believe under any circumstances that even the dyed-in-the-wool Democrats aren't saying that the flag is racist. That flag was also on the uniforms of the soldiers in World War I, World War II, the Iraq War, and all the other wars where we have liberated other countries from fascism. That flag has flown over wonderful things as well as terrible things. It represents a country. It is not representative of racism, and to see it as such, I think you have to have a particularly jaded viewpoint of the flag and the country, and I think you have to be looking for racism in order to see it that way. So I don't agree with you at all. And you still haven't described to me a flag that you would find, and without these, big overarching, flag that represents everybody. Well, physically, what are you talking about? How are the Stars and Stripes, which represent the states and the original colonies, how are those not representative of everybody now? What would you physically change in the flag? What is the flag that you would like to see? And I'm not talking about these ephemeral ideas. I'm talking about physically, what would you like to see as the flag?
Well, I probably would like to see a flag similar to the gay pride flag, probably.
A rainbow flag? You think that's a better representation of the United States? Okay.
I do, yeah.
To each their own, okay. I think it's highly unlikely that the Stars and Stripes would ever be basically, supplanted by the rainbow flag. But if we put it up to a vote, I think you'll lose. But everybody's entitled to their opinion. Thank you so much, Derek. I appreciate it very much. Let's talk with, let's see. Oh, my heavens. We have full phone lines. And when a caller drops off, by the way, it means a line has opened up for you. 617-266-6868 is the number here. Let's talk to John in Peabody. John, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
You.
Good morning,
Sandy. How are you?
I'm fine. So do you think President Trump has done the right thing by signing the executive order criminalizing burning the flag?
Yeah, I think with maybe just a fine, not jail time, because let's talk about one word. And I think one word has sparked controversy right from the very beginning, and that word is allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance, which means you're committing to a subordinate and one leader running an office. So maybe... I know it may not happen, not in my lifetime, but maybe instead of just saying, I pledge my honor to the flag of the United States of America. In that way, like I says, you're not committing to, say, a king, a ruler, someone who forces you to like him. You can walk right by the president, not shake his hand, and still pay taxes. You know what I mean? You don't have to like him.
Yep.
But the idea is you do show pride. You show honor for people who fought for this country with one word. And allegiance means you're bowing to somebody, and I don't think that's correct. I don't think that's right. I think basically you want to show the world of freedom, but you want to show it respectfully so people feel a little bit of pride. But you basically eliminate something that, puts you in chains, or it's some type of boot camp word that just doesn't push you into liking something and being fined for it.
That's a very interesting take, I must say, John. I don't disagree with your word of your utilizing the word allegiance. I don't disagree with what people perceive the flag as meaning. My problem, besides the fact that I think that Janice from Melrose put her finger on it when she talked about you have to be very careful, even making things finable under one president, because that can be expanded under the next president, and you have to be very careful with your free speech rights. But I think that my big issue with all of this is the fact that there is a Supreme Court case that says you can do this, and it's not finable, and it's not jailable, that it's a complete, it's under political expression. And even a fine to me is an erosion into your First Amendment rights. If Congress, who are theoretically supposed to be the voice of the people, decide that they want to amend that First Amendment to include or to exclude flag desecration, then so be it. That's the decision of the country. But that hasn't happened yet. So is President Trump overstepping? I guess is the question, regardless of whether you think it's wrong to burn flags, which I think it is, but it's still not criminal. And a fine is still a criminal punishment, whether, it doesn't have to be jail. It can be, what if it's a $2,000 fine? What if it's a $10,000 fine, John? I mean, wouldn't you find that would be soul crushing for people? And maybe 10 years from now, it's not, the $10,000 fine isn't attached to burning the flag. It's attached to saying you didn't vote for somebody, or this group is crazy. What if it's attached to that? Doesn't that worry you?
Well, Sandy, you make a very good point about, like it says, the fine itself. It's just people need to know and understand, if someone burns a flag, does it mean they want to burn the country down? Does it mean, no, they're just stating that I'm not committing my heart and my life to a leadership that, first off, I don't trust, leadership I don't. It's a statement.
Yeah, and you're saying it's not, doesn't mean terrorism. It means dissatisfaction.
Yes, exactly. And like I said, the one word that would change most of it, I think,
is allegiance.
It's just honor or pride.
Yeah.
I pledge my pride to the flag.
Yeah.
And then I think it would simmer down that, acceptance a little bit.
And get rid of the idea of bondage to the flag.
Exactly.
Well, I
that
think
makes sense at all.
it does make sense, John, and I think that's very well thought out. And I think that that's an interesting idea and might change some people's viewpoint of what the flag means. And maybe that was part of what Derek and Cohasset was finding having an issue. And when he was calling the flag racist, maybe it was not the flag so much as what you're talking about, the allegiance to the flag. Maybe if it was more of I pledge, my loyalty and support, or my support for the flag, but it doesn't mean no matter what, no, in other words, it doesn't mean if there's a corrupt administration that, I'm held to the same standard. Maybe that would make a difference to people.
What the penalty is going to be, if you burn a flag, you get 1 year in jail, no early exits, no nothing. You get 1 year in jail. If you burn a flag, and what it does is incite to riot. I hope they use that language, by the way. Did they?
Yeah, incitement is
incite to riot. And you burn a flag, you get 1 year in jail. You don't get 10 years, you don't get 1 month. You get 1 year in jail, and it goes on your record. And you will see flag burning stopping immediately.
Yeah, you might see flag burning stopping immediately, but the problem is that it's already been litigated at the Supreme Court level, and they said it's okay to burn a flag. That was President Trump signing the executive order criminalizing burning the flag. Now, it's funny because while Dems are in strong opposition to basically anything that President Trump does, there have been a lot of people on Capitol Hill, a lot of your elected representatives on both sides of the aisle, including Democrats, who have voted in favor of measures to crack down on the desecration of the American flag. I think back in, almost 30 years ago, you had Clyburn from South Carolina, you had Captor from Ohio, Jim McGovern and Richie Neal from Massachusetts, Frank Pallone from New Jersey, Adam Smith from Washington, Benny Thompson from Mississippi. They all voted for a constitutional amendment that would have prohibited the desecration of the American flag, but they lost. And then in 2005, they tried again. You had, again, Clyburn and Captor and McGovern, Neal, Pallone, Smith. And then you also had Cuellar and Stephen Lynch from Massachusetts, David Scott of Georgia, and Brad Sherman of California added their names to that list, all trying to pass an amendment that would, in fact, criminalize desecrating the flag. But it didn't pass. Congress hasn't passed it, so it is not a crime. So instead, President Trump signed an executive order making it so. And what they've done is that they've made it Pam Bondi's job, Attorney General Pam Bondi. She is now tasked with investigating and prosecuting instances of flag burning. And this is the codicil that they put in there when they announced this executive order yesterday, where prosecution wouldn't fall afoul of the First Amendment. But what situations would those be? Can anybody tell me an instance where the First Amendment would not be involved in burning the flag? That, to me, is they put this codicil in there to make it palatable, but how does that work? I mean, how do you say this is not a First Amendment issue when the very act of burning a flag is a First Amendment issue? So it seems to me they're trying to create a loophole for prosecutions, but that loophole can't exist. It's nonsensical. So at least that's how I read it, as nonsensical. Do you agree with me? Do you approve of what President Trump signed into law yesterday? Charles in Sudbury, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
And thank you for taking my call. And I just wanted to say first, Sandy, I really appreciate your fair-minded dialogue with your callers on this issue. I really admire it.
Thank you.
I agree with Janice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think President Trump has the right under our Constitution to make a law like this himself, especially when the Supreme Court has ruled that the First Amendment protects this kind of behavior. I fly the American flag on my home. I love the flag, but I love what the flag represents. It is not a golden calf. It represents ideas like freedom of speech. And so a part of my revering the flag is revering the right of people to say things that I abhor. So I think President Trump is trying to provoke a new Supreme Court case with this executive action. But what would be needed is a...
Mike?
But has passed 3/4 of
I'm sorry, Charles, we lost you for a minute. Could you, what we needed, and I didn't hear anything after that, so could you go ahead with that? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. A constitutional amendment, which not only Congress would have to pass, but 3/4 of the states. So, and a constitutional amendment against flag desecration, not just flag burning, how do you interpret desecration? Is flag burning, sure, that could be considered desecration. What about putting the flag on rolls of toilet paper? Sure. What about putting it on Kleenex? Well,
what about hanging it upside down? Yeah, there are all sorts of ways you can, there are all sorts of issues. Or the case that the Supreme Court heard in the 70s where somebody put a peace sign on the American flag with tape. That was found not to be desecration, but if there's an amendment, would that become desecration? I don't know.
Yeah, that's where we get it. It gets really difficult. And what if somebody appended to this proposed amendment the idea that we criminalize flying the Confederate flag in the United States, that is tantamount to treason and terrorism too? I mean, this could just go on and on and on. And the fact that you would criminalize desecration of the American flag, but would not criminalize flying the flag of treason to the United States, what would that tell the American people? What would that tell the rest of the world about who we are and what we think we're doing by making the flag sacred? And by the way, that itself is a form of blasphemy. There's only one thing that's truly sacred, and that is God. When you make a national symbol sacred, you are worshiping a golden calf.
I really love that analogy that you just made about making the flag sacred equals a golden calf. I really do. It speaks to me very much. And I think that's correct. I understand the awe people have for the American flag, and what it has done. But I think you're right. It doesn't need to be a golden calf. And I think that's one of the principles that the Supreme Court upheld in 1989 is that it is not, there are things that are more important than the flag, one of which is your right to free speech, which is, ironically enough, represented by the flag. So the flag represents, as you put out, your freedoms, your freedom to speak your mind and your freedom to disagree. I think you are absolutely right when you say that President Trump is trying to provoke another Supreme Court case. I think that's exactly what's happening here. I think he's a brilliant man who's smart enough to know that you just can't sign something into law that flies in the face of a 30-year precedent like the Johnson case, the 1989 Johnson case, without looking for trouble. And I think he's poking the bear, and I think that's why he wants to do it. And they tried very hard to make it sound reasonable so there could be a court case. And that means this is Sandy Schacht sitting in for Jeff Kuhner here on the Kuhner Report. Our text line is 70470-207 on the text line says, I think it's funny how the people burning the flag don't realize the flag represents the freedom to do so. That is a little bit of irony, I think, that is lost in a lot of people. And that is, for me, what the flag represents. President Trump has signed an executive order which holds flag burning to be a jailable offense. He acknowledges that the Supreme Court said it was protected political expression under the First Amendment, but still, he says violence can ensue, so what the hell? We're going to criminalize it. Cut number 1, please, Mike.
All over the country, they're burning flags. All over the world, they burn the American flag. And as you know, through a very sad court, I guess it was a 5-4 decision, they called it freedom of speech. But there's another reason, which is perhaps much more important. It's called death. Because what happens when you burn a flag is the area goes crazy. If you have hundreds of people, they go crazy. You can do other things. You can burn this piece of paper. But when you burn the American flag, it incites riots at levels that we've never seen before. People go crazy.
People go crazy. Can he do this? Can he, given the fact that Congress has failed to do it, given the fact that the Supreme Court said it's okay to burn the flag, can President Trump sign that executive order and enforce criminal penalties for burning the flag? Let's go to David in California. David, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
Thank you. How are you doing, Sandy?
I'm doing okay. So do you support President Trump's executive order?
Well, what I support is you can't go out on the streets or on the sidewalk and burn anything, or even 2 feet into my lawn. The city owns that.
Well, I don't think they're talking about burning it on your city streets. They mean
no, I understand.
Ever.
Yeah. No, yeah. But if you want to burn any flag in your backyard or front yard, do whatever you want. That's fine. But
well, not according to President Trump. President Trump says if you do that, you can be jailed for a year.
Well, yeah. Well, okay. So if I went outside and just in my front yard and burned some, plastic or paper bags from, the grocery store, right? Mm-hmm. No one's going to trip out. They're like, oh, this guy's crazy. But if they see a flag, then that's going to incite something.
Yeah.
So I understand that. But I totally understand that has to be passed through, the House and everything and, the Senate. But, it's crazy because when I see video footage of people burning the American or any flag, they're not burning in their backyard. They're out on the streets. They're protesting in front of a public building.
Yeah.
They're on the sidewalk or something burning the flag.
Yeah.
And that's that's anything. If you're burning anything, that should be totally outlawed and you should go to jail.
I think it is. Actually, I think for most, but it depends on where you are. But most cities have a ordinance that says you can't do that. But it's not jailable. It's usually a fine.
Corn's a whole different situation. But for some reason, you can burn the American flag on the sidewalk in California, and nothing happens to you.
Wow.
But if I burn some paper bags or some trash I have or whatever, then, oh, no, that's bad. You're going to jail.
That sounds like selective prosecution to me.
Oh, it is. Well, I know. That's California for you. But that's how I would look at it if I was Trump. I would say, hey, if you're outside on public property, on your sidewalk or whatever, you burn anything, you're going to, if I was king, which, he's not king, but I would, if I could pass a law, and if you're caught burning anything on public street, sidewalk, or whatever, right?
Yeah. Then
you should go to jail for a year, hands down. I think that would stop it. You don't even have to say the American flag. Like, I can't go to Canada. Can you imagine if I went to Canada or Mexico or Brazil or England and I went out on their streets and started burning their flag?
Oh, they'd kick your ass out of there so fast.
Oh, my gosh. I would be either be dead or hurt really bad.
Yeah. Well,
or half dead.
Hopefully not, but they would not ignore you. Let's put it that way. They would not just walk on by. There would be hell to pay. My guess is that you're looking at maybe, getting your butt thrown in jail and most likely, they would also escort you to the nearest airport if there was water or the nearest border, depending on where you are. I agree with you. The problem is that that you can't enact a national law that prohibits burning things in public. That's up to the states. That's a state issue, and in many cases within the state, it's a city or town ordinance as well. So I think, I understand exactly what you're saying, that just eliminate the burning part of that, then that would cover the flag as well, and then we wouldn't have to worry about tangling with the Supreme Court over past precedent. But the president's office can't outlaw burning public things in that kind of a blanket way. That's up to the city and town. So that's why I think that it's tailor-made for. I think that's a brilliant idea. I think it takes care of a lot of issues, but you just can't do it because of states' rights and over the federal government overstepping there. So that's why they probably didn't do it. But I think it's very creative thinking, and I think it's trying to think outside the envelope, which President Trump does all the time. I think this case here, the executive order, is an example of him trying to think outside the envelope. He doesn't like flag burning. He's always said he doesn't like flag burning. I don't like flag burning, but he's trying to find a way around the 1989 case. And so I think a previous caller had it correctly. He's come up with something that's going to provoke another Supreme Court case. And that is how he's going to try to get around it. He does not expect this executive order, I don't believe, and I could be wrong, but I don't think he thinks this is going to fly with very many people because of the 1989 Supreme Court case and because of the efforts of Congress to pass a constitutional amendment that would make an exception for flag burning to the First Amendment. They haven't been able to do it. And so I think President Trump is trying to poke the Supreme Court into doing it. Do you think that thank you for the call, David. I appreciate it very much. Do you think I'm right there, Steve and Revere? Steve?
Yeah. I'd like to preface with saying that, I'm a veteran of the United States Air Force.
Thank you for your service, Steve.
Oh, yeah, you're very welcome. But, the flag, I display it outside of my house year round, not just on, like the 4th of July. I'm a Trump supporter. And, I do believe it's a First Amendment right. But beyond all that, constantly, hearing talk about the upcoming midterms and how close the margins are. And I'm just really kind of wondering about the timing. I mean, I just fear that Mr. Trump or President Trump may be handing the bullets to his political opponents to shoot them with.
You think that?
I just think
you think that it's that
Bad.
dangerous? Well, except that I see what you're saying. You're saying that if he signs an executive order that makes him appear as if he's trying to be king by overturning a Supreme Court case by signing an executive order, which is exactly what he's accused the other side of doing on more than one occasion, that he is going to give a foot up to his political opponents who said, see, we told you, be worried about him being a king, being a fascist, being a dictator. Look at what he's doing. Is that what you're saying? Oh, I have to hold. Steve, hang on, and we'll finish this conversation on the other side of the break. This is the Kuhner Report. I am Sandy Shack, sitting in for Jeff Kuhner. President Trump has signed an executive order which allows for criminal prosecution of flag burning. Before the break, we were speaking with Steve from Revere, an Air Force vet, who says he too reveres the flag. But isn't the president handing his political opponents bullets for the midterm elections, given the fact that the executive order is in opposition to an established Supreme Court precedent which finds flag burning to be protected under the First Amendment? And does not this make President Trump look like a dictator? Did I word that correctly, Steve? Is that your position?
Yeah, yes, it is. I think the metaphor that comes to mind is like, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to look at the bigger picture right now. There's so many things that we're dealing with that are so important, and I think this one can wait. I really do.
Well, I think you have a very good point. I think that, except there's one thing that makes me think that might have factored into his consideration of doing that. And this is what I spoke about a little bit earlier, that a constitutional amendment for flag desecration really has bipartisan support. You have a lot of Democrats who have signed on to it, and very powerful Democrats too, like Jim Clyburn of South Carolina, like Benny Thompson did from Mississippi, like Jim McGovern, Richie Neal, and Steve Lynch from Massachusetts. These are all high-profile Democrats, and they've done it. David Scott of Georgia, Brad Sherman of California, Cuellar from Texas. These are all really high-profile Democrats, and they support an amendment to the Constitution which makes an exception for flag burning under that First Amendment, saying that you can't do it. This is not free. This is not free expression. So I think that protects him a little bit from that, not entirely. I think your point is well taken, but I think that's probably one of the factors that he thought of in going after this. And I also think that the point made earlier by other callers that he was trying to provoke the Supreme Court into taking a case. Obviously, he has to provoke somebody into challenging this law who's going to be progressive, left-wing, and I think they will try to make a lot out of it, like you said, and have the Supreme Court be the bad guy, not him. But I think your point is well taken. I mean, don't we have other fish to fry right now? And why would you expend your political capital on this if you don't have to, I think is what you're asking. Is it not?
Yeah, again, I think it's about the timing. I mean, you got all, I don't know, you do have all the, the people, in government who are supporting and who are not necessarily on his side. But, you also have, the press who are just going to just run with this, and you got people out there who are just going to be who are on the fence, who may be swayed by whatever the media feeds them, and I just don't think the timing's really great for this fight,
Yeah,
but,
I don't disagree with that. I was kind of surprised when I saw when he was doing a whole slew of things yesterday. He has this. He is the most transparent president we've ever had. He almost every day, if he's in the Oval Office, he opens the door and says, "Come on in" to the press gaggle, which is such a refreshing change from what happened after President Biden, who you didn't see for months at a time. And so he had everybody in again yesterday, and he was signing executive orders, and among other things, he was also meeting with President of South Korea and so forth. But it was. I had not realized the flag burning thing was coming up again. And there you had it. And I was like, wow, that's interesting timing. And much like you, I thought, why now? Why are we doing this now? Except that maybe he's thinking he has a window of opportunity before the midterm elections to get stuff done that he wants done. And he's letting people know that this is important to him. I don't know, but I kind of agree with you, Steve. I think it could have been saved for a later time. Maybe after the 2028 midterms might have been a better time. So, you and I agree on that. Thank you so much for the call, Steve. I appreciate it very much. Let's go with Jared in Georgetown. Jared, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Do you agree with President Trump's executive order criminalizing flag burning?
I can't really say I agree with it or disagree with it. I've never been for desecrating the flag. And I feel like there's plenty of other forms of political demonstrations and stuff like that. So I can't really agree with it or disagree with it because there's already a rule in place saying you can do it. Then you should probably go through the proper channels. But growing up, I always thought it was illegal to desecrate the flag.
Well, it is illegal to do certain things to the flag, but burning the flag was specifically held to be protected political expression under the First Amendment in the 1989 case. There have been, very small things that have happened over the years where people have tested what desecration means. We had an earlier caller say that that's a slippery slope, who decides. And so far it's been piecemeal, what has been decided to be desecration, what isn't desecration, has been tested by the Supreme Court, coming up for, decades. You had in 1968, they tried to pass that law that made it illegal to knowingly cast contempt upon any flag of the United States by publicly mutilating, defacing, defiling, burning, or trampling upon it. But that did not survive the Supreme Court. They found in 1974 that you could not be convicted for using tape to put a peace sign on an American flag. And so that was, what was that? That was Spence versus Washington. And so that every time somebody tries to do something and they have the resources, or they get the attention of somebody who has the resources to take it to the Supreme Court, they do. And the Supreme Court has agreed to hear these cases. And so that's, desecration. I don't, it depends on what level of abuse you're giving the flag, I suppose. It's going to be infinite if desecration becomes the watchword. So I think they're going to have to spell out what desecration means if they pass an amendment, or if they pass any kind of law. But I was raised the same way you were, Jared. I mean, I was taught to respect the flag. We had a flagpole in front of our house, and we would put the flag up, and we were very careful not to let it touch the ground, and we folded it a certain way, and we didn't leave it out in the rain. And when it became old and tattered, we brought it to the VFW for disposal. I mean, that's what we did. Were you raised the same way?
Exactly, yeah. Pretty much, especially with military and the family and stuff like that. And it was just, you always gave respect to it. And that's why I called, too, is because one of the callers had said something about the Pledge of Allegiance, and how you're pledging allegiance to a leader, and that a lot of people don't like the leader. But in the Pledge of Allegiance, you're not pledging to a leader, and nowhere does it say you have to respect the president. You're pledging allegiance to the United States itself, your country. You're expressing patriotism towards the country. It doesn't say that you have to respect the president or like the president. So like that earlier caller kind of confused me by saying that.
So you're saying you pledge of allegiance to an idea, the idea that are represented, that are codified in the Constitution, is what you're pledging allegiance to.
The nation stands for.
Yeah.
So like the whole idea of like freedom of speech and everything like that, that's why we pledge to the flag.
Okay.
But the other caller, too, had said that the flag was flying during these racist events and during the 60s or whatever, when black people were getting attacked and beat up on the streets and all this. But the flag was also flying when the Union liberated the slaves. And other events, like you had mentioned, during the World War I and World War II. So it's like, it was just kind of silly.
Yeah.
And it was like, it kind of got to me, so I had to call.
I appreciate that. No, I can understand. He kind of took me aback too. Like, what do you mean? So because of course the flags were flying during bad times, but they're also flying during positive, good times and times of national celebration and joy and accomplishment. It's a U.S. flag that we planted on the moon. I mean, didn't that fill the country with enormous pride that we had accomplished something like that as a nation? We had put our mind to it, and we had did it within John Kennedy's 10-year time period, which everybody thought was impossible. So I agree with you. There are many things that the flag represents that are positive. I think, and what I said to him and what I say to you is that I think it takes a particular mindset looking for a craven definition of the flag to see that in the flag. I think that even if you have felt oppressed, or I think even if you felt that the flag has flown in bad times, to only see that when you see the flag means that that's all you see, period, I think, with everything. So I don't think the flag is any different than anything else you look at in that respect, that you see everything through that lens and not just the flag. Do you agree with me?
100%.
Yeah. Thank you for the call, Jared. I appreciate it very much, and I'm glad you decided to weigh in, because I was feeling a little odd about that particular phone call myself. Chris from Missouri, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Chris?
Doing fine. I want to make the point. A caller said that a flag, if you have a law against desecrating a flag or burning it, that somehow makes the flag sacred. We already have that. We already have a sacred flag that is in our society is not allowed to be touched. That's called the LGBTQ flag. See what happens if you do anything to that on a public square.
I believe
in New England.
I believe you would be ridden out of town on a rail, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. We already have a sacred flag, so we have a serious problem. Also, you might want to take a look at what they're doing in Britain right now. They're actually displaying the British flag is becoming criminalized. So Sandy, my point is symbols matter.
Yeah.
The left knows symbols matter. And if they can get rid of our symbols, they can elevate their symbols. So I believe it is an us and them thing. That's my point.
Well, I think I understand what you're saying, but I think the us versus them, the them needs to be defined. I think the them is the woke, not necessarily the Democrats. As I said before, there are a lot of Democrats who feel that flag desecration should be codified and should be an exception to the First Amendment. I think the woke don't have respect for anything but themselves, and those are the people that I think you're talking about that revere political group flags more than they revere a country's flag. Do you think that's a fair statement?
I think that that side does not want to would gladly outlaw the display of an American flag of any kind.
Well, what I'm trying to get you to do is define that side. Who is it that? Because I don't think it's.
People
I don't
that
think
hate this. People that the people on the left that hate this country hate the American flag and they want to see it go away.
Well, I think that's true, but I'm trying to define more the people of the left. I guess there are because as I said before, there are left-leaning Democrats. There are Democrats and liberals who revere the flag. So I think it's an even smaller subset than that. I think it's a progressive communist group or far left group who have created, the woke religion that are the people that you are talking about. And I think it's a smaller subset. I'm trying to really make this not so much about political lines, meaning Republican versus Democrat, as it is about ideological, meaning the conservatives, the center of the road, and even some liberals aren't as far left as the progressives, the Marxists, and the communists who absolutely want to destroy any positive symbolism of the United States. But I think it's a much smaller group than people think it is. Thank you for the call, Chris. I appreciate it very much. Let's talk to Maria in Ludlow. Maria, good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you, Miss Sandy?
I am fine. Are you a supporter of President Trump's executive order criminalizing burning the flag?
I am.
Okay.
And I understand about the First Amendment. I really, truly do. But I think it's just taken way too far. I mean, I've been on this earth today 49 years. And I've been in America since 1990. And to become a U.S. citizen, I studied the books, I took the classes, and I learned about American history, and I developed a special love for this country because I will forever be Portuguese. That will never change. But now I am an American Portuguese citizen. And I fly the American flag proudly in my house. And a lot of people take offense if they see an American flag. They get overjoyed if they see an American flag being burned. And to me, that is hateful. I understand that it's their First Amendment, and they need to understand, and I don't think they do, that it is their First Amendment right that gives them that right to do that. And that, in my belief, my book, it's wrong. And I agree with President Trump doing that to poke the bear to see if something can be changed, because Biden laws that the Supreme Court said no to, especially like the giving money to the loans,
student loans, yeah.
The Supreme Court said no, and what did Biden do? He went ahead and did it.
Yeah.
So nobody called them names. Nobody did anything. They were all happy because they wanted the government to pay for their debt that they consume. So I don't think President Trump is doing this. He understands about the First Amendment. I think he's a very smart businessman. He knows that he's poking the bear, and he wants to poke the bear because I don't agree with people burning the flag. God forbid, like that last young man said, if they burn the flag of the LGBTQ and the trans people. hell would break loose and do a dance. But burning the American flag, so these Dems, these woke people are okay. And they don't have no respect for it. They don't have no respect for nobody. And I believe they don't even have respect for their own selves. And I hope to God that someday, looking back when they're older, they say, oh my goodness, what have I done? Why did I do that? I cannot believe I let them make me believe that burning the American flag was the right thing to do. So in that aspect, I agree, and I understand about the First Amendment, but I agree. Let President Trump poke the bear and see what can be done. Because you know what? Regardless of what Trump does, I've come to that assumption, people will call him names, no matter what, right, wrong, left. They will call him names regardless. And I say to him, move forward. Not to be disrespectful, I love the American flag. To me, it symbolizes what this country has given me an opportunity and patriotism and the love that I have for this country and the love that I have for this flag and what it has done for me. Right or wrong, that's the way I think. It might not be the right way for everybody, and that's okay. But that's what I believe. And it's very wrong.
Well, I think that was beautifully put, Maria. I really do. I don't agree with you necessarily, but I think you articulated your position extremely well. To me, I think there has to be another way to poke the bear than becoming a scofflaw like Joe Biden was. I mean, you pointed out how he didn't care what the Supreme Court said and ignored them when it came to a public policy that he wanted to enact. In that case, it was the student loans. And I thought that was horrific. I couldn't believe that a sitting president would thumb his nose at the Supreme Court. And I feel the same way here. And that I understand that maybe the motivation here is one, protecting people from violence, but two, also trying to get this adjudicated by the Supreme Court again. But I think there has to be a better way than taking a look at a 1989 case and saying, screw it, I'm not going to pay attention to it. I think that makes him as bad as Joe Biden in that respect. In regard to being a scofflaw. And I find that very, very upsetting. But also in regard to what you were saying, you are proud to be American and you're proud of the flag. So am I. I'm proud to be an American and I'm very proud of the flag. But isn't part of that pride also in upholding the Constitution and the laws in the Supreme Court of the country? Isn't that what part of the things that make our country great? I understand the motivation behind President Trump, and obviously you do too, and you approve of it and you agree with it. But I think there had to be a better way to do it than this. I think that's where we differ.
I see what you're saying, and I partially agree with it. And I hope that he can come up with a better way. I truly do. But sometimes you have to pick up the gloves and fight fire with fire.
Yeah.
And I hope to God that there is a better way. But until then, this might be the best way.
Okay. Well, you know.
Am I sure? I don't know. I hope there is a best way. I pray that there is a best way that it can happen and be a better solution to the whole thing.
Well, I think you have made your support very clear and you have articulated it very well. Thank you so much for the call, Maria. I appreciate it very much. Let's go to Tommy in West Virginia. Tommy, welcome to WRKO. How are you this morning?
I'm doing good. Just getting a little bit of the ragweed fever from. I
know that problem.
Yeah, it's that time of year again. But no, freedom of speech is freedom of speech is freedom of speech. You want to burn an American flag for protest, I really don't have an issue with it. And you know me, nobody is more Trump than Tommy in West Virginia.
Well, that's for damn sure.
Now, you had a previous caller who brought up the sacred calf, the LGBTQ flag. My God, if you burn that, that's a hate crime. I hate crime legislation.
Yeah.
And do you know where hate crime legislation started?
Where?
Soviet Union.
Oh. You surprised me with
So
that.
in other words,
okay, yeah.
If someone from Croatia called somebody from Poland a Polak, a derogatory term, you could be imprisoned for that. And all I can say is thank God for Mr. Bill Mullen, the teacher, my senior year in high school at Foxborough, Mass., that when I finally stopped being Beavis and Butthead and put down the weed and sobered up, I learned an awful lot from Russian history, and especially with the Communist Revolution. And everything that we've been seeing the last 30 years from the American left, from the late 80s, when it started that hate speech on college campuses, hate speech. That was to silence young.
Hold on, Tommy. I'm sorry. We're up against a break. Hang on, and I'll pick you up again on the other side. This is Sandy Shack sitting in for Jeff Kuhner here on the Kuhner Report. Before the break, we were talking to Tommy in West Virginia. I'm sorry we were so rudely interrupted, Tommy. Continue, please.
No worries. I mean, hard breaks are hard breaks. But getting back to the point of hate speech in the old Soviet Union, number one, if you lived in the Soviet Union, whether you were in Kazakhstan or Afghanistan or Poland or Croatia, you were part of the big picture of the Soviet Union. And what they tried to do was get rid of nationalism. That was the whole point of hate speech crimes back then. And this is what the American left have done with regards that trying to make the American flag to be a symbolism of racism, oppression, and all the above. Is these people just basically are paralleling what the old Soviet Union did. And the state is more important than your individual rights. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few is how you can sum communism up. And need I remind you, there was a talking head on MSNBC named Melissa Perry Harris, I believe, who said, we have to start thinking about our children in the collective. Give me a break, okay? Children belong to their parents. And what we're seeing in this country now is that there's a swing going back to the right, and it's the pendulum theory of politics. And the American left has pushed too far. I don't have a problem if they're homosexual. You're free to live your life. Marriage is a contract, as far as I'm concerned. It's been a sacrament, as far as the Catholic religion and other religions, between a man and a woman. But I believe in freedom, being an American. And it's not going to ruin my life if people live, as homosexuals. I want them to have the same freedom that I have. But with regards to freedom of speech, you will not be arrested for burning a Bible, but you will be arrested for burning a Quran. You will be arrested if you burn a gay pride flag. You'll not be arrested for burning an American flag. You burn a Confederate flag, nothing's going to happen. And there's people that occasionally you'll see a Confederate flag down here. And the reason why most white people fly a Confederate flag, it's not that they hate black people and they want to go back to the Civil War. It's the middle finger towards the federal government in many ways. And I had to explain that to a couple of friends of mine that are moonbats from Maine that came to visit me a few months ago, that they're like, oh, my God, I can't believe people fly the Confederate flag. Well, number one, it's on their own property. Number two, those are people that basically are the anti-establishment of today as compared to a hippie in 1967 that wear long hair and bell bottoms. So, things go up and down, and I believe what Maria and Ludlow said, that what Trump is doing is poking the bear. And this is not the first time there's been an attempt at the federal level, legislative level, to make burning the American flag a crime. It happened in 1989, and if this was 1989, I was a Democrat, and I was very liberal back then. And what made me change was the so-called progressives of the Democratic Party. I'm a blue-collar, working person that believes in labor unions and the right to collectively bargain. And that's when I started hearing this term, progressive. And I went to 2 Massachusetts state conventions as a delegate from Ward 10, Mission Hill. The first one was 1988 in Springfield, Massachusetts. The second one was at Walter Brown Arena at Northeastern University in Boston. And that's when I started hearing that term progressive. And I used to say to myself, Tom, I know you're a Democrat, but what the hell are these other people? And like I say, just slowly but surely, they've pushed the party now to the point of where the movers and shakers, the mouthpieces of the American Democratic Party, hate this country. They hate its founding. They hate everything about it, and they constantly rant and rave about slavery. And I'm really tired of hearing about slavery. And I don't mean to offend anybody who's black, but enough.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people feel that way, Tommy. I would disagree with something that you said, and that you said there's a move afoot legislatively to deal with desecrating the flag. This is not a legislative movement that's happening. This is an executive branch. Legislative means Congress is doing it, and Congress is not doing it. Congress has to do it. You can't have the president just completely ignoring a Supreme Court case and the lack of congressional action on this. They've tried, but they haven't been able to legislatively pass anything regarding desecrating the flag or a national desecration law. They tried to do it in the 60s, but that they passed something, but it didn't pass the Supreme Court muster, and they've tried a couple times to amend the Constitution to get around that, but they haven't done it. And so now you have the President of the United States signing an executive order, completely doing an end run around both the Supreme Court and Congress. And that is dangerous because I think, as other callers have pointed out today, regardless of how proud you are of the American flag and how much you revere it, and how much you are upset by people desecrating it, it's a violation of the Constitution. It's a violation of the separation of powers. It's a violation of the First Amendment. There's all sorts of issues here, and I think another caller pointed out that this is kind of funny doing it right now before, as you're starting to gear up for the 2028 midterms or 2026 midterms. I think that's a problem. So we will wait and see where this goes. But I think President Trump, regardless of his motivation, has made a mistake in doing this and signing an executive order that basically gives the big fat middle finger to the Supreme Court. I don't think he should have done that. And I think his motivations may be pure, protecting people from violence may be pure, but his methodology leaves something to be desired here. Thank you for the call, Tommy. I appreciate it very much. When we come back, I'm going to play for you again President Trump's rationale. I'm Sandy Shack, sitting in for Jeff Kuhner. The First Amendment protecting speech has come under fire in the past 24 hours simply because one of the protected forms of speech is political expression, and the Supreme Court has included flag burning as an accepted form of political expression. They did that in a case in 1989. So when President Trump signs an executive order criminalizing flag burning, isn't that flipping the bird to the Supreme Court? Or, do you think he was within his rights to do so? Do you agree with the executive order that he signed? Ronnie in Boston, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Ronnie?
Hey, good morning, Sandy. Thanks as always for taking the call. Really enjoying this morning's show. I respectfully disagree. I think Trump knows exactly what he's doing. I don't think this is a mistake at all. Because even if Trump, quote unquote, loses, he still wins. And the reason I say that is because if you're going to make a stretch, this very well indeed may be a bit of a stretch for Trump, given the Supreme Court decision. But that being said, I think most Americans would rather prefer overreach on the side of America than against America. And secondly, if Democrats, they're on the 90-10 or 80-20 side of everything, Let them go into the midterms with their only victory against Trump being they protected Americans' rights to burn the flag. What a victory for Democrats.
Yeah.
And that's my point, Sandy. Even if Trump, quote unquote, loses this, he still wins. And, and I think that he's also very well aware of the fact that there's a massive cultural shift taking place. I've said it before speaking with you. Traditional femininity is back. You saw that with the Sydney Sweeney ad. Traditional masculinity is back. And traditional patriotism is also back. Trump knows this, and Trump is leveraging that position with his position. And so this is a victory for him, even if this gets stepped on by the Supreme Court or Congress or the Senate. Nobody's going to fault President Trump for siding with the American flag and siding with patriotic America. Nobody's going to fault him for that, even if he loses.
Well, I agree with you. In that respect, I think that traditional patriotism is back, and I think nobody is going to fault President Trump for being too patriotic. I think the problem comes from what a previous caller said, in that the overreach, you said you'd rather have overreach on the side of America than against America. The problem is who decides what that overreach is. Under Trump, you trust it to be on the side of America. But what about the next president who says, well, Trump did this, so I can do this, and only this time it's not on the side of America? Overreach is overreach. Whether you approve of it or not, it's still overreach. And there's a reason why we have these very clearly delineated lines between branches of government, because that's how the system works. And when one branch oversteps into the territory of another branch, then you start to have chaos happen and things break down. Now, this one this particular overreach you approve of. You don't mind it because you don't like flag desecration. I don't like flag desecration. But what I like even less is the idea of an executive branch that oversteps its boundaries, the same way I don't like it when Congress oversteps its boundaries, the same way I don't like it when the Supreme Court oversteps its boundaries. Those lines are there for a reason. They are what keep us moving forward and safe and protect our rights. When they start to blur, when you start to erase them, even if you like the underlying cause, you have to look 20 steps ahead strategically and see what could happen if you do that, even though you like this. And even though I like the idea of flag burning not being constitutionally protected, it is. And the Supreme Court says it is. And so far, Congress says it is. So for the president to say it isn't is a serious problem for me, Ronnie.
It's not a problem for me because Trump's not erasing anything. He's simply challenging an existing ruling. And you had just said, Sandy, well, who gets to decide what's America first and what isn't? Well, the 77 million Americans that voted for Trump get to decide. The 77 million Americans that carried every single swing state.
Well, what about in 10 years, Ronnie? In 10 years when it isn't MAGA who's in the White House? What if they are great? If they're not, what happens then? What if it's, Mamdani's party and they decide at that point? If you've allowed this to happen, it's kind of like when you think about it, the Democrats' wholesale attack on Trump when Biden got into power. All gloves were off. They weren't passing legislation. They were spending all their time going after Donald Trump. And they did that actually during his administration as well. So that lowered the bar, so to speak, for attacking your political opponents. That made it possible to attack everybody and anything and waste our time and our taxpayer dollars with specious arguments. That's what happens when you lower the bar. And this kind of thing lowers the bar. When you sign an executive order that flies in the face of both Congress and a Supreme Court, an established Supreme Court case, you are asking for trouble. Maybe not now, maybe not during this administration, but maybe 2 administrations from now, or maybe even in the next administration, because who knows what's going to happen. We didn't expect during President Trump's administration for there to be a worldwide pandemic that upset his beautifully working economy and made it possible for the Democrats to become elected. Now, I know people argue that that election was stolen, but that aside, the fact that that they could actually get close enough to make that argument, if that's what you believe, that was created by the pandemic. Who knows what's going to happen next to put somebody in power that you do not agree with? That is why even when you like something, you have to look at what the overall effect is. Is this going to cause trouble if we are not in power? Because there will come a day when you are not in power. And so you can't establish a precedent of ignoring the other branches of the government, because then you're concentrating too much power in one particular branch. And that is exactly what our founders did not want and why they set everything up the way they did. And that's why we have a First Amendment, why we have a Supreme Court, why we have the executive branch and the legislative branch. And if you allow one branch to say screw it to the other two, we don't have a government anymore. I understand you like this fact, and I understand that this, makes you feel good. It makes me feel good. I don't like desecration of the flag. Don't like it. But this I like even less, Ronnie. That's all I'm saying to you.
Well, what I'll just say in closing, Sandy, is that, back in 2008 when Obama won, we had a huge natural disaster in Haiti and other areas of the world, and the Obama administration ordered all our military personnel and foreign aid, do not fly the American flag. It's provocational. The country overwhelmingly voted for Obama, and those were the types of sensibilities that came with Obama.
Yep.
Well, 77 million voted for Trump, and none of them have a problem with Trump challenging this Supreme Court decision.
Well, Ronnie,
now, if he loses,
that's a statement you can't make. You have no idea how many people approve of it and how many disapprove. You've heard this morning a number of people who support Donald Trump, in fact, don't support this, including myself. So it's, you can't, that's a blanket statement that has no basis in fact whatsoever. And that, I respect you and like you, Ronnie, but still, you can't make statements like that and just assume that I'm not going to challenge it. One. And two, you just proved my point. You had Obama going out there himself denigrating the flag, not desecrating it, but denigrating the flag. And then sensibilities changed, and now we have a president who wants to stop the flag burning. Okay, that's great. But what happens in another 4 years when an Obama-like guy gets back in office? You don't want to blur the lines between what the power bases are. That is my point. Thank you so much for the call, Ronnie. I appreciate it very much. Let's go to Susan in Florida. Susan, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Susan?
I am well, and I hope you're having a great day, because I totally disagree with you.
Okay.
As a mother of soldiers,
yep,
and as a wife of soldiers, and when I see the flag draped coffins coming home from war, and when I see the kids, that 30 and under crowd, that probably have not pledged allegiance to the flag in their classrooms. A lot of classrooms in our country don't even have the American flag. A lot of kids have never pledged the flag since kindergarten. And I think it's this generation that don't understand the meaning of our American flag. It's just not freedom or freedom of speech. It is allegiance. It's allegiance to your country. And I don't understand why people just don't get that. I'm all for it. Now, when you think about the Supreme Court decision,
Susan, I need you to hang on through the break. We're about to go into, you're about to hear the music. We're going to go into a break. And I understand you want to make a point about the Supreme Court decision, and I want to give you the time to do it. So if you'll hang on, I will come back to you on the other side. Before the break, we were speaking with Susan in Florida about President Trump's executive order criminalizing the burning of the flag. And she was telling us what the flag means to her as a mother whose children are in military service, and decrying the level of patriotism in the schools and in the current generation. And Susan, you wanted to say something about the 1989 case, Supreme Court case, Texas versus Johnson, the case that said you can burn the flag?
Well, within that Supreme Court Supreme Court decision, there was a little clause in there that said, as long as it doesn't incite violence or lawlessness. And then in 1969, Brandenburg versus Ohio, They also said the key that the act itself is symbolic speech. However, if flag burning would directly incite imminent lawless action and violence, per Brandenburg versus Ohio, 1969, it could lose its protection. Look I know that Donald Trump loves this country. He loves our flag. I love our flag. I fly it every day. I have a light on it at night. I just don't understand why the left doesn't understand that. And I don't think they teach their children to love their country, to respect their country, to honor their country. And honoring the flag is not burning it. That's all I have to say, Sandy. It just really gets my heart going. You know what I mean?
I do. I completely understand. I hold the flag in high esteem, as do you. I do not have children in the military, but I can understand the added influence of that on children who are risking their lives to uphold what that flag stands for. I completely understand that. I wouldn't make your blanket assertion that the left is responsible for. I think it's a subsection left, because there are many Democrats, and I've specifically listed them earlier today, who are also hold the flag in high esteem and who've tried to pass a constitutional amendment to bar desecration of the flag, and so far they've come within one vote of being able to do it. So it's not a Republican versus Democrat issue. It is, I think, an issue regarding a lot of conservatives, a lot of independents, a lot of center of the road, and some Democrats versus a very vocal, woke minority, progressive minority, and communist minority who don't have a problem with desecration of the flag. But what's happened is that there are some things that are actually even more important than the symbolism of the flag. And one of those things is the First Amendment. And the First Amendment is held by many, including myself, to be probably the most important freedom that is codified in the U.S. Constitution. And that is what Texas versus Johnson upheld. They upheld, even above flag burning, even above the flag itself, they upheld freedom of speech and found that burning the flag, and you are absolutely right, as long as it did not incite violence, was protected political expression. And in Johnson, Texas versus Johnson, they found specifically that burning the flag in this instant did not incite violence, and therefore it was protected speech. And as I said before, each of these cases has been very specifically tailored to whatever form of political protest was going on. The putting of the tape of the peace sign on the flag was, in the 1974 case, was not desecration. The burning of the flag is not desecration. All of these cases were not desecration because no violence was incited, and that's basically the issue. President Trump's executive order specifically says, and I have played the cuts a couple times this morning, saying where violence is incited. They put that in there specifically to tailor what they were doing to the decision, the Texas decision. But the problem is that none of these cases, none of them have anything to do with violence. And I know people interpret burning the flag as violent, but the Supreme Court has said it isn't, unless it results in somebody getting hurt. And so far, that has not happened. So I understand your point, and I think President Trump understands your point extremely well, and that is why he's tailored his executive order to say where violence may happen. The problem, but he also said where it also does not run afoul of the First Amendment. And my issue is there is no instance when it doesn't run afoul of the First Amendment. And it's always going to be an issue with the First Amendment. And there is a violence exception to the First Amendment, and that's why you have you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater, because that's held to be not a violation of the First Amendment because there is danger associated to it. By the way, I just want to point out that example drives me crazy all the time when people say you can't yell fire in a movie theater. You can yell fire in a movie theater if there's a fire. So it has to do with what happens afterward, the violence afterward. You are exactly right in regard to your interpretation of both the Johnson case and the Brandenburg case and all the other cases. If violence happens, then this does not apply, is what all of these cases stand for and what President Trump's executive order stands for. That still doesn't make it okay to criminalize burning the flag under the executive order, because you have to prove that it didn't run afoul of the First Amendment. And I don't see any instance where that can happen. But I understand the exception. It stands for all First Amendment exceptions. Whenever there's violence, the First Amendment is not applied. So your point is very well taken, Susan, and I appreciate it very much. Let's go to Mike in Linfield. Mike, welcome to WRKO. Do you approve of President Trump's executive order?
Absolutely not. I didn't approve of Orrin Hatch's attempt in 2006 either. He tried to pass an amendment back then.
He did.
I consider this a win for the flag burners. They pushed Trump's buttons and got him to sign the CEO after he has such a great head of steam on the economy and foreign policy and the illegals and with the tariffs and everything else. I mean, why would he do this now before the midterms? It's going to peel off libertarians. And it's upsetting a lot of people, including me, because it's a win for the flag burners.
So you agree with the earlier caller who thought that signing this executive order was handing his opposition bullets for the midterm elections?
The burners who are pushing his buttons. They know what buttons to push. They get so upset about it. That's why there's probably more flag burnings. And now there's going to be even a lot more, because now he's made it a basis for civil disobedience. So you're going to see a lot more flag burnings because of the executive order. He had hundreds of millions of us respecting the flag with no love because it was from our heart.
Yeah.
Now, what's that worth?
It's still worth the same thing it was worth before. It doesn't go away just because it's an executive order. It has nothing to do with if you respect and revere the flag. This doesn't affect you.
Flag. It doesn't stand for freedom. Pure freedom anymore. It has this stain on it, this executive order stain on it, in my mind.
See, I don't understand why you think the executive order is a stain on the flag. The executive, I don't see how, to be honest with you, I don't see that at all. What I see is an issue with the separation of powers in regard to the Supreme Court, which has ruled upon the subject, the legislature, which is trying to rule on the subject, and the executive order, which is running roughshod over both of them. That's where I see the issue. I don't view it as a stain on the flag. How so?
The flag flew on its own. It was free. It stood for freedom no matter what. It made lunatics who burned the flag, made them look stupid. So they're burning the very symbol of the freedom to do that. So these are just idiots, and there's always idiots among us. I mean, a very small percentage. I mean, there's just stupid people. That's the way I always thought of them.
Yeah.
They say, well, how stupid could you be to burn this flag as your symbol of the right to do that?
So what's changed about that? Because that's not new, by the way. That's been going on since, the Vietnam War or before. So stupid people burning the flag as a means of protest is not a novel thing. So why does President Trump coming up with an executive order to codify this as criminal, how does that put a stain on the flag?
Now it's a basis for civil disobedience.
It's always been a basis for civil disobedience. It's always been that.
Civil disobedience is when it's against the law. But it wasn't against the law before, so it wasn't civil disobedience. It's civil disobedience to do it in spite of the law. That's civil disobedience.
What it's been is a sign of disdain for the United States, and that hasn't changed. So it's like the guys kneeling at the football games to show disdain for the flag. I mean, the people burning the flag, they're all the same ilk. All the same, I want to show you I disdain, so I'm going to take your biggest symbol that you have, and I'm going to do something disrespectful to it. That's not going to change. That's the way it's been. I mean, it didn't cause a rash of flag burnings in the past few years. Why do you think it's going to start doing that now? They've been the same people who were doing it 30 years ago are the same people who are doing it now.
Well, there'll be more people doing. Now they're going to increase it. You're going to see more flag burnings because now it's against the law, whereas before it wasn't. So they only saw lunatics doing it before. Now you're seeing the left.
It's still going to be lunatics doing it, Mike. That hasn't changed.
Not people that want to, poke Trump. That's the reason they're going to do it. And they're going to get away with it because look at all these judges. They're not going to throw people in jail for it.
Well, that's a good point. We'll see, how many rogue judges there are out there. They may just do that because it looks, it makes them look like they're following the law. So maybe they'll throw people in jail for it. Maybe they won't. We'll have to find out. I think do you think this is all part of President Trump's master plan to see exactly how crazy the left is?
It was a stupid move on his part. I'd like to know who in his cabinet agreed with him. We won't find out till after his term. But I think there's probably a lot in his cabinet that says, don't do this now. This is not a good move after all. Like I said, he has such a great record up to now.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
It's like, why do this?
Well, I'm sure we were going to find out over the next few weeks what exactly the grand plan is, whether this was all about, but in order to get to the Supreme Court again, somebody's going to have to be arrested. And so there's going to be, like you said, a lunatic who's going to burn a flag in public, and then there's going to be an arrest, and then there's going to be a group who's going to try to get him out, or the DOJ is going to go after some hapless ADA who's not prosecuting, or who knows what the combination is going to be. But if their purpose behind this was to get it to the Supreme Court, to get it codified again, or to overturn the Texas versus Johnson case, then we're going to find out within the next, 6 months to a year if that's the plan and how that shakes out. So, but thank you so much for your call, Mike. I appreciate it very much. Let's talk to Larry in Boston. Larry, do you approve of the executive order?
Somewhat.
Okay.
I think that the main thing we have to remember is that during 9/11, after, we saw nothing but flags everywhere, on every car, in everybody's houses. Yeah. It was all over the place, and there seemed to be a lot of respect for the flag. Mm-hmm. Now, I just came from a funeral from a veteran, a World War II vet, and they had a great ceremony with the flag, and that's been going on now since, I don't know when it started, but it's been going on for a very long time. And all those veterans that lost their lives, died after being in the service, they did their job to give these people this freedom that they have. And now it seems to be they're abusing it. But you just look at who's burning the flag and on these TV news clips and stuff. And it's not freedom that's being represented. It's like the freedom is being stomped on. And I just don't, know what else to say. It just seems like his idea is good, but what's going to happen, as a result of it? We saw what happened when 9/11 happened. Everybody was patriotic, and then it disappeared. And
well, do you think, Larry, that now there's a resurgence in patriotism? Has there been a resurgence in the past couple of years? I mean, during the Biden administration, and actually before that, during the Obama administration, somebody pointed out earlier that, President Obama didn't want the American flag hung over areas where the U.S. was giving aid to natural disaster countries. He also went on an apology tour for across the U.S. Oh, and I remember in his first term, do you remember Michelle Obama getting up and saying for the first time she was proud to be an American as an adult? In fact, I have that cut. Hang on. I know I have that cut in my arsenal. I do. Play cut 50, please, Mike.
Let me tell you something. For the first time in my adult lifetime, I'm really proud of my country. And not just because Barack has done well, but because I think people are hungry for change.
So that's kind of what set the tone for patriotism in that administration. That was followed through in the Biden administration too, because, President Biden used to get out there and say, we're an idea. We may not hit we may not be successful in that idea, planting the seed that, we weren't about freedoms. And so I think that patriotism took a big hit in the past, dozen years or so, with the exception of, President Trump when he hit the White House for 4 years. But do you think now, Larry, that it's starting to come back again?
I think it will cause a lot of what's same thing that's going on now. The people that believe in patriotism and believe in the country, and the people that are here that say they demonstrate that they are here, but they don't like what the flag represents and what freedom represents, but yet they're showing everything the wrong way. That with all the riots and all the other stuff that's been going on, and all I can say, Sandy, is like Arlington National Cemetery. That's what this country, these people fought for, from going way back.
I grew up in D.C. I spent time in Arlington. It is one of the few places on earth that I would call awe-inspiring. I've been to only one other place has the same feeling for me, and that would be the American Cemetery in Normandy in France, where I had the same sense when I was there. But Arlington is literally awe-inspiring when you look at the people who are buried there and what they gave for their country. And you see you'll see like whole flight crews being buried together from World War II, World War I, or Vietnam War, any of the wars. And it is one of those very sobering, just breathtaking places that I think everybody should visit at some point in time.
She's poking the bear, and there's a lot of bears.
There are a lot of bears, Larry. Absolutely. Thank you for the call. I appreciate it very much. I think Larry's point is well taken. I think that the President Trump is doing this to, I don't know. Do you think he's doing this to gin up patriotism? Is he hoping to generate support for the flag and patriotism in order to have Americans coalesce more? Because Lord knows, under the last president, who claimed he was a peacemaker, he did nothing but divide this country, ferociously. So maybe what President Trump is doing by signing the executive order is trying to get people to coalesce around the American flag and generate more patriotism. I don't know. Is that a reasonable reading of what President Trump did? Because he can't honestly think he can do an end run around the Supreme Court by signing an executive order. I would not think. Bill from Sudbury, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Bill?
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. Instead of the free speech argument, I kind of like the personal property argument. My big thinking is, if you go down to the store and you buy that flag belongs to you. It's yours. You can do with it what you will. The guy down the street has no say in it.
Well, what about this? What about the symbolism of the flag, Bill?
Do you want to trigger 1,000 calls to your local police department because somebody doesn't have a spotlight on the flag at night or something? Do you want to deputize
Nobody is
everybody?
Nobody is talking about calling not putting a spotlight on a flag desecration. They're talking about burning, Bill. There's a huge difference, don't you think?
How about tearing it down off of the Capitol and hoisting a Trump flag in its place and everybody cheering?
Nobody did that either, Bill. Again, nobody has talked about that particular action. What we're specifically talking about is burning the flag. Do you have a problem with President Trump signing an executive order criminalizing burning the flag?
to condemn them tearing the flag down off the Capitol and hoisting the Trump flag?
That's not what we're talking about. Nobody has hoisted a Trump flag over anything. We're talking about burning the American flag.
The reverence for the flag is completely fake, and you proved it on January 6th.
My reverence for the flag,
Capitol.
First of all, my reverence for the flag is completely fake. You don't know nothing about me. How would you know how I feel about the flag other than what I've told you, which is
because you're not outraged on January 6th when they tore it down to hoist the Trump
Nobody
flag.
hoisted a Trump flag over the Capitol on January 6th. I mean, I don't know if you had a dream where you thought that happened, but it did not happen. Nobody did that. And absolutely, I feel strongly about the flag, as do I think everybody who called this morning has some feeling for the flag, except for you, who seem to be obsessed with something called a Trump flag, which, by the way, I've never seen. Is there a Trump flag? I'm unaware of it. Did he hang it over Mar-a-Lago, or did he do it over his hotels? I don't know. I've never seen it, nor have I seen anybody even try to hoist a Trump flag. Never mind put it over the Capitol or take down the United States flag. I think if there's one thing that everybody can agree upon, both friends and enemies alike, is that Donald Trump is a pretty patriotic guy. You may not agree with how he follows through on his patriotism. President Trump signed an EO yesterday, making burning a flag a crime punishable by a year in jail. He tweeted about it yesterday afternoon. Saying, notwithstanding the Supreme Court's rulings in the First Amendment protections, the court has never held an American flag desecration conducted in a manner that is likely to incite lawless action or fighting words is constitutionally protected. That's debatable. But this is the tweet as it continues. The American flag is the most sacred and cherished symbol of the United States of America, and desecrating it is uniquely and inherently offensive and provocative. It is a statement of contempt and hostility toward our nation, and an act used by groups of foreign nationals calculated to intimidate and threaten violence against Americans. I don't disagree with that statement that about America being the most cherished symbol. He's been a critic of flag burning for a very long time. This is nothing new for him. What is new is signing an executive order that basically encroaches upon the standards that were set out by the Supreme Court in Texas versus Johnson, the 1989 case that allows flag burning as a form of political expression, freedom of speech, as long as nobody is hurt by it. That's essentially what the case stands for. And President Trump has said, yeah, we don't think that that's sufficient. And I think he's asking for this case for his executive order to be challenged because he wants more codification, and Congress has fallen short on doing it. I just think this is the wrong way, and I agree with people who've called and said it's the wrong time to do this, because he may be handing a political win to his opponents when it's kind of a unenforced error. He doesn't really need to do that right now. Let's go to Bob in Raynham. Bob, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
Hi, Sandy.
Hey, so do you agree with the president's order?
I do not agree with the president's order. However, I do believe it should be some sort of offense, at least a fine or something. And I'll say this, I believe, as has kind of been said in previous callers, if I go to a gay pride event and I burn a, gay pride flag, I'm probably going to get arrested for at least disturbing the peace, which I believe I should be. Mm-hmm. And I believe the same should be said for the American flag, or even, if you went to, a Palestinian-Israeli protest and either side burnt the other flag, you're certainly inciting violence and or, disturbing the peace at the very least. So I think it should be an arrestable offense. But as far as serving a year in jail, I think that's crazy. And as far as Congress acting on it,
I believe this is sort of a separate issue, but I believe that Congress is turning all presidents into dictators because they don't act anymore. All they do is act on party lines. There's no spirited debate. I mean, we've been at war for, I'm going to say, half of my 65 years of life, and yet Congress hasn't declared war since 1941.
Oh.
I mean, they don't act.
Yeah.
They do not act.
Well, I agree that there is an issue with Congress. They need to focus more on actually getting things done than they do on, getting their face and their voice on the evening news. But what you said regarding burning the flags, inciting violence, and disturbing the peace, I don't think it's inciting violence. It's unless violence actually occurs at that point in time, you can't say something incites violence, because then what you're doing is you're saying everything incites, because this happened 2 months later, because it's very difficult unless something actually physically results in violence right then and there. You can't say it incites violence, and you can't assume that it incites violence. In regard to disturbing the peace, the Supreme Court specifically held in the Texas versus Johnson case that burning the flag did not reach the bar to prove disturbing the peace. It was not disturbing the peace. They specifically held that phrase with that action did not occur. So you can't assume that's flying in the face of the Supreme Court right then and there, saying it disturbs the peace. It doesn't. They've ruled it doesn't. So that would take you back to your inciting violence. Okay, it's possible that it would incite violence, but I think in that case, it needs to be taken on a case-by-case basis. So you'd have to look at any particular moment where somebody burned a flag. Did somebody get hurt in that immediate environment? Did something happen there that caused somebody to get hurt? That's inciting violence. Did somebody, see that and then throw a brick through a window or hurt somebody or, physically abuse somebody? That's what you have to look at. But you can't assume that the action, and what the Supreme Court is saying, you can't assume that the action is going to incite violence, and the Supreme Court case, to give President Trump his due, the Texas versus Johnson case deals specifically with the Texas desecration laws, no other laws, just that one. And that law found that burning the flag was disturbing the peace, and the Supreme Court said, no, it doesn't. But the inciting the violence is still open for interpretation. They have yet to have a case that deals specifically with that. And maybe that is what President Trump is looking for, Bob. Maybe he's looking for the case where somebody's gotten hurt or damage has been done to property. There's some kind of violence that occurred. So perhaps that's exactly what he's looking for is to have that adjudicated, because it hasn't yet by the Supreme Court. What do you think?
And to go forward, not even, I know we're talking about flag burning, but what if I walk through a black neighborhood with a Confederate flag? I mean, I'm certainly disturbing the peace. I'll probably get my brain speed in.
You wouldn't be disturbing the peace, not by the Supreme Court standards, but you might incite violence. So it's not illegal for you to carry a Confederate flag through a black neighborhood. That's the point. But it would be stupid, and you would probably upset a lot of people. But upsetting people is not illegal either. Our text number is 70470. Criminalizing flag burning. The Supreme Court and the First Amendment say not so fast, as long as no one is hurt. What do you say? Let's go to Chris in Florida. Chris, what do you think? Did President Trump do the right thing in signing the executive order?
I think a year was a little much, but no. You know what bothers me, Sandy?
Chris, could you pick up your phone? If the speaker, there's a bit of an echo on it. Could you pick up your phone for us?
Are you there?
Yeah, can you pick up the phone?
Okay, great. I think a year was a little much, but I get a little perturbed at people that are ignorant to our country's history. Before the Johnson case that was signed into law in 89, but came before the court in 84, it was against the law, federal law, to burn a flag in public. People can buy a flag and burn it on their property, but nobody has the right to burn anything in public. That would be like me saying, you got to get back to critical thinking with logic. If it's okay to burn one flag or burn a flag as a symbol in public, then my attitude towards Chinese cards, I should be able to burn a Chinese card. But guess what? People say, whoa, that's a little extreme, Chris. And I say, no, it's not. You've got to have equal protection under the law. You're a lawyer, Sandy, and you should know this. Now, you keep referring to the Supreme Court has always said, no, it hasn't. Has always done blah, blah, blah.
I didn't, Chris, I've never said the Supreme Court always did anything. I said the Supreme Court from 1989 held this about flag burning. And not only that, but earlier in the day, I gave pretty much a complete history of in the first section of the show today, gave a pretty complex and complete listing of what has happened with flag burning going back to 1907. So, no, I have not done that. So let's not make blanket statements like that.
Democrat voter that did the burning at a Republican convention.
Yeah.
These things matter. These things matter as evidence that other issues are in play to cause these events. Long story short is that we, right now, these events from 2015 have instigated, and this is all part of the overall picture, a civil war. We are in civil war. I get tired of the people that think that 1 minute there's no civil war, and then the next minute, the next day, there's full-blown civil war. That's not how civil wars work. We are watching the events leading up to civil war, but we've already been in the civil war, and the Democrats have always instigated this stuff. I could go on and on with history. I have a 30-plus year hobby historian. People got to get to know their history of this country. It's extremely. Our founders wouldn't listen. It was against the law federally to burn the symbol of our freedom up until 1989 when it was actually signed into law. All those years before, the people were incorrect? No, there's agendas, and we've got to get back to the history to see the agendas that are going on in certain areas of human intervention. People keep saying the government. That's a misnomer. There's no such. Our government is the United States Constitution. I am tired of people using generalities to indicate when human involvement is involved. We got to start naming names of people doing stuff within our government to actually be able to straighten it out by addressing those human beings. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for taking the time and trouble to call, Chris. I appreciate it. The one thing I do agree with you on is that the past is prologue, that I do agree that you need to look at history and learn from it and not ignore it. Maybe that's what President Trump is doing when he signed the executive order. Maybe he's thinking, let's learn from past mistakes. We need to make desecrating the flag an exception to the First Amendment, and maybe that's what he's trying to provoke with his executive order. I hope he's trying to do something like that as opposed to just do an end run around the Supreme Court. Dave from North Carolina, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Dave?
Good. How you doing, Sandy? Good to be talking with you.
Well, thanks for taking the time and trouble to call. Dave, do you agree with President Trump's executive order?
I'll be honest with you. I do agree with it, just because I think he's bringing things to the forefront. One of the things that President Trump always does, and we always second guess him, and he always ends up being right, is he brings these issues to a point, and we get to talk about it, and it comes to light. And from my personal standpoint, my family, my father fought in World War II, was dropping bombs on Germany, and my mother was a young girl. And I remember when she, long after she became an American citizen, she told me this story. She goes, I was in Maine, and I went in to take the oath. And she said, I looked walking into the city hall, and she goes, I saw the American flag flying. And she said, I looked at it and I said, that's a symbol. It's a symbol of liberty of life and the pursuit of happiness. And that's my personal thought, is that the flag is a symbol. It isn't a god. It's an idea. It's an idea that people can live in this country. They can read what they want to read. They can believe who they want to believe. And all that's beautiful. And I just think by tearing that symbol down and stomping on it or burning it, you're burning the idea. And if you burn the idea, what's left? Is there anything truly better than this country? I mean, I really say no. And
I'm
all
with
those
you.
boys, all those boys and girls that have fought, they're holding up this country. And it just really, President Trump does it. I mean, every time I sit there and I go, why is he doing this? And this is stupid, and this is a bad time. And people are saying, oh, he's just giving the other side fodder to fight against him in election times and all this time. And every time the guy is right. And he's the only one that's ever taken a bullet for me and for this country, other than the soldiers that have died for it and the soldiers that are serving now. And I think it's a good idea. I mean, he's bringing it forward, and I'll be honest with you. I think what's going to happen is the left is going to tear themselves apart over this.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And I agree with you about the symbolism and what it means. And what it means to me is very similar to what it means to you. I agree with the sentiment behind why President Trump would be doing this. I think that's correct. I just disagree with how he's doing it. I think that we are precariously in a position where there are too many people who are trying to ignore the rule of law in this country. So anything that even closely resembles ignoring the rule of law, to me, is something to be shied away from. And so that's part of my issue with him signing this executive order. Even though it has the exemption, it has to cause violence, which he says is a loophole in the Texas versus Johnson case. And they would only prosecute it where the prosecution would not run afoul of the First Amendment. In both those instances, I'm not comfortable because, first of all the cases, the desecration cases that have been in front of the Supreme Court, none of them have really involved violence. So that's why there is that loophole that exists. But more than that, when they say as long as it does not run afoul of the First Amendment, I don't see a situation where that ever happens, because the Supreme Court has held that burning the flag is a freedom of speech issue. It is protected freedom of speech. It is a political expression within the definition of the First Amendment of the Constitution. So it's like saying, we'll catch all frogs except where they're frogs. It doesn't exist. So I think there may have been a better way to bring patriotism to the forefront. I don't know what that is. And you are absolutely right in that President Trump does things that are not easily explainable to a majority of people, and then they turn out to be correct. This is the Kuhner Report. I'm sitting in for Jeff Kuhner. And we're talking about President Trump's signing of an executive order on flag burning. It was titled Prosecuting Burning of the American Flag. And it does not direct the Attorney General to prosecute those who burn flags in and of itself, for the act itself. Rather, it says the Justice Department should bring cases against acts of American flag desecration that violate applicable content-neutral laws while causing harm unrelated to expression consistent with the First Amendment. And the laws that are they give examples of those laws, and it's violent crimes, hate crimes, illegal discrimination against American citizens, or other violations of American civil rights and crimes against property and peace. And the order also directs the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, and the Secretary of Homeland Security to take action against foreign nationals who have engaged in American flag desecration activity by revoking their visas, resident permits, or seeking, their removal. Here's the problem with the order. The president does not have the power to change the First Amendment. And flag burning as a form of political expression, of political protest, is protected by the First Amendment, and the Supreme Court in the case of Texas versus Johnson, and it's been so since 1989. While people can be prosecuted for burning anything in a place that where they're not allowed to set a fire, like on a public street, the government can't prosecute protected free speech, expressive activity, even if other people find it uniquely offensive and provocative. You don't have to like flag burning or support flag burning or ever want to see flag burning. You can condemn it. You can hold your own protest against flag burning. But the thing about free speech is that you get to express your opinions even if other people don't like what you have to say. So even though I find flag burning disgusting, that person has a right to burn the flag under the First Amendment and according to the Supreme Court. So I don't see where President Trump has the right to issue an executive order making that criminal speech, basically. Let's talk to Tim in South Carolina. Tim, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
Hi, Sandy. Good morning. I usually do not like to speak in hypotheticals because I've always found them unproductive. I assume as an attorney you agree. But I have to say here, though, if President Trump signed an executive order yesterday saying that it's okay to burn the flag, I guarantee to you, Bill from Sudbury would have taken the complete opposite stance. All of the Trump deranged would. This is modus operandi for them. How dare he say that it's okay to burn the flag? And then he would go into his tirade. So I really wanted to bring up that point. Also, my answer to your question is yes, I agree with President Trump. I think if I walked down the street and I just started a fire in a public place, I don't know if this has been brought up yet, but if I started, isn't that an arrestable offense right off the bat?
Well, it depends on where you are. But yeah, I would say probably yes. Yeah. But we're not talking about generally setting fires. Setting a forest fire is also an arrestable offense, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about burning a flag, and there's nothing in President Trump's executive order that says burning a flag on a public street. It says burning a flag, which means you could be doing it in your own yard, and it's still a problem.
Right. I think he's trying to bring nationalism back. I think he's all aboard on this golden age idea of just being American again. I think it's a slight to the public schools, the universities. I think he's taking them all on.
I think you're right. I think that's exactly what this is about. And I think he's hoping this is challenged, but I don't think he cares one way or the other because I think you put your finger on it. I think he wants people to think about the American flag and about patriotism and about how proud they are, essentially, unless your name is Michelle Obama, to live in this country. So thank you for the call, Tim. I appreciate it. Let's squeeze in Hal from New Hampshire. Hal, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
Oh, good. Thank you for taking the call. I have mixed thoughts on this action. I hate burning anything, any flag I think would be wrong. Even flags that I detest, like the UN flag and the flag of Communist China. I think it sends a wrong message, and of course where it happens. But I want to make reference to a case in 2019 in Iowa. Are you familiar with that?
No.
There was a fellow, he stole a rainbow flag from a church, and then he set it on fire in front of a nightclub. And for the vandalism, for stealing, he got 6 months. For the fire, he got 2 years. But for the act of burning the rainbow flag, they added, I think, 2 or 3 years to. He ended up getting 16 years, but because he was a convicted felon, they just put him away. But for the act, for the
would they call it a hate crime? Is that how they worded it so that it would have the jail time attached to it? I'm sorry, Hal. I wish we had more time, but we're up against it because that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like I'm actually going to go read that case now.